He's their hockey guru and all things sports, and a host of Hockey Sense as well as Sports Night on Wednesday nights here on the Big 550 KTRS. Any promo for tomorrow's show?
Well, tonight's show now.
Tonight's show, right?
Yeah,
Tonight's Wednesday.
So tonight is Wednesday, so we will be geared up and ready to go tonight, 7 o'clock at O.B. Clark's. Stop on by and be there. Off Brentwood.
All right. First, let's talk Blues. They started practicing. Anything of interest? Anything of note?
Well, you know what? Listen, I like training camp. I really do.
You're
because,
the one.
Yeah, I'm the one. Because this is your opportunity to see some of these young kids that you really won't be able to watch play throughout the course of the season because they either go back to their junior teams or they go back and play in the minors in the American Hockey League. The Blues have a lot of depth defensively, and there's some names people should be aware of now. They're that good. And they're going to make a strong push to make the team out of camp. I just don't know if the numbers are going to be there. And the Blues may have to make an adjustment or two or tweak the roster eventually to get these kids up here. But Colton Parayko is a former third-round pick. This kid continues to impress. I thought he was really, really strong last night. Looked nervous, understandably, early, but his game settled down. Playing with Jay Bouwmeester, he looked like he belonged. You know, Joel Edmondson is another kid who's a former second-round pick. He led the Blues in ice time last night. It was a split squad game, so the team that went to Columbus, he led them in ice time. So again, he's making a push. You have Robbie Fabry, who's a young kid offensively, playing last night with David Backus and Jaden Schwartz. He looked good as well.
We should mention that Pope Francis has emerged from the White House and is on the proverbial rope line, if you will, which is sort of metal gates, and he is shaking hands with the people. People are, as you can imagine, leaning over the fence. Hands are everywhere. Phones are everywhere trying to get a glimpse of the pontiff as he is
leaving for the White House.
Leaving for the White House. Was just hugged by somebody. Hands. You really just can't sort of put your hands on the man, but people are actually doing it.
Do you recall him doing that? You know, Pope John Paul II, when he was in St. Louis, he was in the Popemobile the whole time. I don't recall.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about this Pope is that the Popemobile is nothing more than a glorified golf cart.
Right.
It's not enclosed. It has a little windshield in the front, but the sides and the back and the top are very much open for him. But in terms of and that Fiat yesterday. I mean, the windows were wide open as he was driving down the hall. So he's getting ready to speak at the White House. So we're going to carry that for you as it happens. But he's departing for the White House now, and as they say, is going off script and shaking hands of all sorts of people who are waiting there just to get a glimpse of the Holy Father. All right, so Blues are in action. Anything in terms of football you're paying attention to?
Well, I mean, I pay attention to how bad they were. You know, one guy who continues to, I think, quietly, I don't want to say struggle, but he doesn't play as well as I think people make him out to be, is James Laurinaitis. I thought he really struggled on Sunday. He's supposed to break this Rams all-time tackle record. I once had a real smart football person tell me, you know what the most overrated stat is in football? I said, what? He said tackles. He goes, tackles can be made 12 yards down the field.
That's a good point.
They can be made 8 yards down the field.
It's like wins as a pitcher.
We're not seeing a whole lot of tackles being made beyond the line of scrimmage or blowing plays up. He really struggled. And they got gashed by a rookie running back. They looked horrible in that game.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the inside baseball and inside football and hockey mind of Andy Strickland. I have one final Yogi Berra story for us all. The passing of a legend.
Very sad, by the way.
So as we celebrate the man's life. So when he retired, he was a coach for the Mets for a while. Then he was manager for the Mets for a while. The Mets fired him, and then he became coach of the Yankees, and ultimately taking over the Yankees. In fact, at one point, he managed his son, Dale Berra, as a Yankee manager. George Steinbrenner fires him, and Yogi was very upset with how he was fired and vowed never to set foot in Yankee Stadium ever again. It was sort of a big scandal. Yogi was then hired, I want to say, by the Houston Astros, and he was a manager or a coach for the Houston Astros for a while. And he vowed and kept that vow never to walk into Yankee Stadium ever again. And then years later, we're talking a good 7-8 years later, Dale Berra, his son, writes a letter to George Steinbrenner, and it's published in the newspaper. And this letter says it's Father's Day, and one of the greatest, saddest things that I see from my father is that he is estranged from the New York Yankees. And that if I could have one wish for my father, it would be that the Yankees and my father make up. After that was published, George Steinbrenner drives to Yogi Berra's home in New Jersey
No.
and apologizes.
Really?
And then Yogi accepts his apology and is welcomed back into the Yankee family, and Yogi accepts his apology and lets bygones be bygones.
You know, the thought is nationally that Yogi Berra, if you really look up how great he was and everything that he accomplished,
Right.
you know, he probably wasn't as appreciated.
There's no question. There's no question.
As he should have been. I think with the Yankees, he certainly was. We're very familiar with who he is here in St. Louis because of his history here in this city. But I think now, if you go back and give yourself a chance, read everything he accomplished.
Right.
In his career as a baseball
You're right.
man.
One of the best, just pure baseball.
You'll be
right.
surprised.
His character off the field has sort of shadowed his brilliant baseball career, which is a shame because he's an American icon. He's the world's greatest baseball player, one of the best. He's clearly the best catcher ever, and he was a World War II veteran storming the beaches of Normandy. 8 o'clock, KTRS St. Louis.
From ABC News,